ought to go ahead and get started. What do y'all think? Okay.
If you say there's a quorum, I won't disagree.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. If y'all will take your seats, we'll get started. The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will now come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11, recorded votes may be postponed. Today, we meet to consider H.R. 7273, the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026. And I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Well, I would like to welcome everyone to this morning's markup of a bill that is very close to my heart and vital to sustained U.S. leadership in space, national security. The NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026. For more than half a century, America has led the world in pushing the boundaries of exploration and discovery. Where we have dared to go, other nations have watched, joined, and followed. We understand that our curiosity lies in the stars, and so does our national interest. We stand at the cusp of sending astronauts back to the moon for the first time since 1972. With Artemis II's impending launch on the ever-brightening horizon, there is no more important time to consider today's legislation. As the book of Proverbs, inscribed on the wall behind me, reminds us, where there is no wisdom, the people perish. Our space program, like any great endeavor, flourishes when guided by a clear sense of what lies ahead. So what's next? How do we get there? When do we go? Those questions are answered by this bill before us today. It's our responsibility to read it, know it carefully, and pass it. The NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026 ensures that America does not merely participate in the next era of space exploration, but that we lead it. It strengthens our commitment to returning astronauts to the moon and building the capabilities needed to send humans onward to Mars. It supports the systems, the technologies, and partnerships required for deep space missions, while also fueling a growing commercial economy in low Earth orbit that will sustain American leadership for many decades. With China nipping at our heels and investing heavily in its own ambitions beyond Earth, we cannot afford to drift without direction. This legislation ensures the United States sets the pace, establishes the standards, and carries forward the spirit of exploration that has long defined our nation, America. It also invests in science, aeronautics, and workforce development that will power the next generation of discovery, because leadership in space is not secured by rockets alone, but by the people and ingenuity behind them. At the same time, this bill helps chart the next chapter in low Earth orbit. And for more than 2 decades, the International Space Station has been the cornerstone of American leadership in space, a platform for research, partnership, and innovation. And now we're preparing for a future where commercial space stations carry that legacy forward, with NASA as a customer, American companies as providers, and the United States continuing to shape a thriving space economy. When we look up at the night sky, we are reminded that exploration is more than ambition. It is part of who we are. Ours is a nation that has always moved forward across frontiers, across oceans, and now beyond our own world. The pursuit of knowledge is woven into the American story, and the next chapter will unfold far beyond Earth. This legislation provides the steady direction needed to move confidently into that future. It enhances our ability to operate farther from home, encourages new partnerships, and supports the technologies that will open the doors to places once thought unreachable. And it is in this committee, through the work that we undertake here today, that helps turn those aspirations into reality. The decisions made in this room help lay the groundwork for milestones of tomorrow, the missions that will inspire the world and mark the next giant leaps in human exploration for decades to come. Moments like this do not come often. We're lucky to be here, I think. The choices before us will shape what the world sees when it looks towards space in the decades ahead. Will they see uncertainty or will they see resolve? By advancing this bipartisan bill, we choose to move forward together. I want to thank Ranking Member Lofgren and her staff for their partnership and collaboration in bringing this legislation before the committee. And I want to thank our committee as well, our committee staff as well. We appreciate the work that both of our staffs have done. What we advance here today will determine the next era of discovery and the legacy that we leave behind. I recognize several amendments have been offered, and I look forward to considering them as we strengthen this legislation. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and carry America's journey toward among the stars forward. And I now recognize my counterpart, Ms. Lofgren, for her opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Babin, and I'm glad to join you as an original co-sponsor of the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026. Today, the Science Committee recommits NASA to fulfill its multiple missions in exploration, earth and space science, aeronautics, innovation, education, and inspiration. All of NASA's triumphs, dating back to the agency's establishment by this committee in 1958, have demonstrated to the world our preeminence in science and technology. However, our space primacy is not assured, and we cannot stay ahead of our competitors in the Chinese Communist Party without a robust, well-funded agency that follows a clear, consistent vision powered by an unmatched workforce. I'm pleased that we are able to maintain this committee's long history of bipartisanship when it comes to supporting NASA. I'm also happy that Congress resoundingly rejected the administration's proposed drastic cuts to the agency in our recently passed CJS appropriations bill. Much like the space enterprise itself, through collaboration, hard work, and a good measure of patience on both sides, we have once again achieved good legislative results. Our nation's investment in civil space has and will continue to contribute significantly to innovation and economic prosperity here on Earth. Countless technology spin-offs from the space program benefit the lives of Americans every day. Many of the dividends that NASA pays are intrinsic and immeasurable. NASA's science and human space flight missions have inspired generations of Americans. NASA educational programming has set innumerable young people on a path to a career in STEM. Importantly, this legislation fully supports NASA's STEM education portfolio. This should be a clear message to this administration that we will not shortchange the next generation and throttle our diverse research and aerospace workforce. Science that NASA undertakes yields tangible benefits as well. For example, NASA's Earth sciences are critical to understanding and responding to global climate change. For me, this hits close to home. The NASA Ames Research Center does important work to improve aerial responses to wildfires, including by developing and testing drone technology and aerial operations for wildland fire response. The bill contains provisions that support all of this ongoing work. The bill recognizes the importance of continuity of purpose for NASA's human exploration program. In about a month, 4 brave astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, will begin a long journey to the moon. Humanity will once again demonstrate its extraplanetary ambit, and if we're true to our intent, there will be a future human presence on Mars. However, these lofty ambitions are not without real-life management challenges that demand transparency related to schedule, cost, and government support for the human landing systems. NASA will continue to support ever more compelling and complex telescopes and robotic missions. Congress will unequivocally show its support for the Nancy Grace Roman Telescope and Goddard Space Flight Center team so that humanity may have a grand, encompassing view of our galaxy. This legislation directs NASA to responsibly pursue a Mars sample return program in a manner that sustains scientific leadership, maintains robotic landing and operations capabilities, preserves expertise, while maintaining a balanced planetary science portfolio. As the cadence of space activities increases, our mission must always prioritize safety. This enterprise is inherently risky, and we're not willing to ignore hard lessons learned to meet artificial expectations at the cost of people's health and safety. I'm pleased that this bill contains important provisions regarding spacesuit safety and also deorbit capabilities to prepare for the safe deorbit of the International Space Station at the end of its operational life. I appreciate the constructive input of the space and aerospace community and NASA as this bill came together, and I thank Chairman Babin and Herodopoulos and their staffs for their hard work and cooperation. I want to give special thanks to Ranking Member Fushi for her leadership on the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee. And last but not least, I want to thank my space policy staff, Pam Whitney and Ashley Wilkins, for their expertise and hard work. I note that there are many, many amendments, but I think most of them will get bipartisan support. I would urge members to remember that brevity can be just as persuasive as a lengthy discourse. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Amen to that. Thank you. Other members are invited to submit opening statements into the record if you so choose. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 7273, the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 7273, a bill to reauthorize.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read. I hate to interrupt you that quick, but brevity is good this morning, right? Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the underlying bill? I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Herodopoulos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as chair of the Space Subcommittee, I am proud to support this NASA Reauthorization Act and applaud the committee in bringing forth a bipartisan bill. As a person who lives on the Space Coast, we could not be more excited about the progress that has been made over the last 2 decades. It is so exciting to see American astronauts once again in space, and we can't wait for, of course, the launch in just hopefully about a month or so. I remember just about a decade ago, we were relying on the Russians to get into space. Now, without doubt, the United States is once again leading the world, and this bipartisan effort reflects that amazing work. Through the work of the Space Subcommittee, we have had the opportunity to look at NASA's mission, its workforce, and the challenges that it faces and is an increasingly complex and competitive world. And this legislation before us reinforces America's leadership in space by strengthening NASA's core missions in human exploration and aeronautics, while recognizing the role of commercial and our international partners. President Trump was the first president to mention space in his inaugural address since 1985 with Ronald Reagan. As we all know, he created the Space Force. And he knows, as we know, that we can't be #1 on Earth if we're #2 in space. And this bill reflects that ambition to stay and dominate as #1. I want to also highlight the bipartisan cooperation shown in this committee, and specifically with my ranking member on the subcommittee for space, Ms. Fushi from North Carolina. She has been a valuable partner, and I'm so glad that this committee emphasizes teamwork and bipartisanship. Space has long been an area where members on both sides of the aisle come together around shared priorities, and this bill reflects just that. I'm looking forward to working with the committee members and our chairman, Dr. Babin, and I can't thank him enough for his thoughtful, thorough leadership on this bill and his inspirational message today. We are so excited about the future of space, and this bill reflects where we are going. After all, in the big, beautiful bill, we did increase spending by almost $10 billion for NASA. And as we all know, that NASA budget, despite some concerns last year, is over $24 billion. This administration, and I know everyone in this committee, is fully committed to winning the space race, and this bill reflects just that. And I could not be more proud to present this bill, and I look forward to working with the committee members as we move forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and now I'd like to recognize Ms. Fushi from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word. I want to begin by commending Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren for their leadership in bringing forward this bipartisan NASA reauthorization bill. As a member representing North Carolina, home to a strong space, aeronautics, and research community, I especially appreciate the bipartisan work that has gone into ensuring this bill supports NASA, students, researchers, and institutions across the country. I also want to thank both majority and minority committee staff for their hard work and collaboration in preparing this legislation. As an original co-sponsor, I am pleased to support the bipartisan priorities reflected in this bill, including sustaining NASA's core missions, investing in STEM education and workforce development, expanding responsible commercial capabilities, and strengthening transparency and accountability across NASA's activities. I also want to thank Representative Daniel Webster for his partnership on the Space Resources Institute Act, and I appreciate that this important bipartisan initiative is included in the underlying bill. This provision reflects Congress's shared commitment to advancing research, innovation, and continuing U.S. leadership in emerging space activities. As ranking member of the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics, I am deeply committed to ensuring that NASA continues to advance American leadership in space and space science while creating educational and economic opportunities for communities across the country. I thank the chair and ranking member again for their work on this bill, and I look forward to supporting its advancement. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yields back, and now I'd like to recognize Representative Ross from North Carolina.
North Carolina loves this bill. I'd like to move to strike the last word. I'm pleased to speak in support of the NASA Reauthorization Act. This bill is a statement about who we are as a nation and how we will continue leading. At a time when space is becoming increasingly central to national security and global influence, this legislation ensures that the United States remains the world's leader in space exploration. The NASA Authorization Act provides long-term stability for NASA's missions. By authorizing sustained investment in exploration, science, and innovation, it allows NASA to plan boldly. This stability fuels groundbreaking programs like Artemis, which will return Americans to the moon, and lays the groundwork for future missions to Mars. These efforts inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers while pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. This legislation also strengthens the U.S. economy. NASA's investments support hundreds of thousands of high-skilled jobs, drive technological innovation, and generate breakthroughs that benefit everyday life. When we invest in space, we invest in American workers and ingenuity. Critically, the bill helps the United States maintain leadership and in an increasingly competitive space race. China is rapidly expanding its space capabilities, from lunar missions to satellite networks that could reshape global power. If the U.S. fails to lead, we risk ceding influence over the rules, norms, and technologies that will define the future of space. I thank the committee for including my amendment to codify NASA's ability to have no fewer than 2 human spacelander systems, co-led with my colleague, Congresswoman Stevens. This amendment is critical to human spaceflight, especially for missions as complex and high stakes as returning astronauts to the moon. Furthermore, I fully support the amendment offered by my North Carolina colleague, Congresswoman Foushee, regarding the National Space Grant Program. This program is vital for fostering U.S. leadership in aeronautics and space exploration by supporting STEM education and research. I support the underlying bill and urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I recognize Representative Bonamici from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word and speak in support of H.R. 7273.
Recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren, for your leadership on this bipartisan reauthorization. I'm pleased that this legislation includes 2 amendments I previously offered to address the increasing threat of wildfires. Wildfires devastate communities with growing intensity and frequency. They're affecting many regions of the country, including my home state of Oregon, that are currently unprepared to respond and recover. Recent wildfire seasons have set records for duration, spread, and risk to life and property. That's true in Oregon and across the country. Our systems for wildfire preparedness and response were built for a different time. They must adapt to meet the challenge of worsening fire conditions. So this bill would authorize NASA's FireSense program to support research, development, and demonstration of wildfire mitigation and management technologies across all phases of the fire cycle. This program will reinforce NASA's Earth science applications by focusing on enhanced predictive modeling and wildfire early warning. NASA's a leader in advanced technologies, and their partnership and scientific knowledge can provide us with the tools we need to identify, track, and contain deadly fires. By making FireSense data and resources available to operational users, we can mitigate the effects of wildfires on communities and ecosystems and ultimately save lives. This bill will also direct NASA to incorporate the science, data, and technology recommendations from the National Wildland Fire Mitigation and Management Commission's 2023 report into its ongoing science activities. In their report, the members of the commission emphasized the need to enhance research into science, data, and technology for wildfire management and develop tools to improve response and mitigation efforts. And NASA is well equipped to leverage its expertise to reduce the risks of wildfire. I would also like to highlight the Ascend Act, which I'm pleased to co-lead with Congressman Hurd. The text of our bipartisan bill is included in this reauthorization. The Ascend Act will authorize NASA's proven commercial small sat data acquisition program, a program that has already demonstrated its value to fill critical data gaps and empower research. Since 2017, NASA and federally funded researchers have harnessed smallsat data to study our planet. This data helps scientists detect harmful algal blooms before they poison coastal ecosystems, measure wildfire emissions, and predict burn patterns with greater precision, and importantly, monitor crop health to help farmers boost yields and secure our food supply. Commercial satellites are now so advanced that they can track sea level changes, measure soil moisture, and even spot methane leaks all from orbit. That means faster response to disasters, better planning for droughts, and stronger climate resilience. At a time when our planet's systems are rapidly changing, we must give our scientists the best tools available to keep pace with the challenges ahead. So thank you again to the Chair and Ranking Member for introducing this bill. I urge all of my colleagues to support this important bipartisan reauthorization, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Now I'd like to recognize Representative Sykes from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to you and the ranking member for holding this markup today. Today I'm proud to offer H.R. 6898, the Bipartisan Airship Act, which I introduced alongside my colleague and fellow Ohioan, Dave Joyce, as an amendment to the NASA Reauthorization Bill. I am proud that my district is home to the most famous airship in the world, the Goodyear blimp. In fact, when you hear the word airship, I bet this blimp is one of the first things that comes to mind, a testament to its legacy of innovation and marketing in Ohio's 13th Congressional District. In fact, the blimp celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2025 with a 100-city tour that probably made it to a city near you. While most people are familiar with the Goodyear blimp and its many appearances at Ohio State football national championship games, advertising is not the only use for airship technology. This amendment would support the research into additional civil use cases for airships, often referred to as blimps, that could contribute to national defense, provide economic, sustainable, and clean air cargo transportation, support disaster response efforts, and provide humanitarian aid to people in areas in need. Especially in the face of challenges such as global pandemics and natural disasters, airships are uniquely capable of accessing remote locations or damaged landscapes and delivering resources and services where traditional aircraft often cannot. This amendment would enable and reintroduce the world to practical, economical, and environmentally friendly airship transportation. Despite the range of applications, there are only a handful of airship manufacturers in the world, and Akron, Ohio is home to two industry leaders, Goodyear and Lighter Than Air Research. Alongside the University of Akron, LTA is already advancing cutting-edge airship technologies. This amendment would support this innovative work, such as research into fuel cell systems and leveraging advanced materials like those developed by Akron's Sustainable Polymer Tech Hub, made possible by the CHIPS and Science Act. I strongly urge the rest of my colleagues to support this amendment to keep our country at the forefront of airship research. I am also proud that this NASA reauthorization includes H.R. 5122, the NASA Talent Exchange Program Act, which I introduced alongside my colleague and fellow Ohioan Congressman Miller. This bill establishes the public-private talent exchange program within NASA to allow NASA and private industry professionals the opportunity to exchange technical expertise and operational best practices. Since 2018, the Department of Defense has operated a successful private-public talent exchange program, allowing the DoD to forge partnerships with private sector companies and swap business practices to improve both sectors. Through the establishment of the private-public talent exchange program, I am excited to see how the transfer of ideas and expertise between NASA and the commercial industry will continue to break new ground in human spaceflight. We all know that Ohio is the birthplace of aviation, and Northeast Ohio is home to the premier NASA Glenn Research Center, and the road to Mars goes through Ohio. With this proud legacy of innovation in the aerospace field, it is clear that getting back to the moon relies on the state of Ohio, and I am proud to offer this amendment to get us one step further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
No one yields. Is there further discussion on the underlying bill? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed with amendments in the order that they are listed on the roster. The first amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by the chair. The clerk shall report Babin Amendment number 1.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Babin of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. I am proud to offer this amendment that clarifies NASA's authorities to purchase commercial services for deep space missions. This amendment continues this committee's long history of supporting America's world-leading commercial space sector. From the passage of the Commercial Space Launch Act of 1984 to the Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Acts of 2015, this committee has provided steadfast, bipartisan backing to America's pioneers in the commercial space industry. This amendment carries that tradition forward. When America returns to the moon as part of Artemis, we will do so in partnership with our innovative commercial sector. As we venture farther into space, we will continue to rely on the ingenuity of the private sector as new capabilities come online. This Congress, we have made historic investments in our return to the moon. Between the One Big Beautiful Bill, which I was very proud to support, along with the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations legislation signed by President Trump just 2 weeks ago, between these investments and the power of our commercial sector, America will continue to lead for years to come. I want to thank Ranking Member Lofgren for joining me in support of this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this very important measure. Is there further discussion? I recognize the Ranking Member.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for the amendment, which I'm happy to co-sponsor. The commercial space industry, which NASA and DoD really helped to create, has been a remarkable success story for our nation. And it wasn't that long ago that the commercial launch business was dominated by foreign launch providers. Now the reverse is true. So this makes America stronger. I want to thank you for your leadership. I support passage, and I want to lead by example in brevity. Yield back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Herodopoulos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly support this amendment. America's commercial sector is leading the way with next-generation vehicles to sustainably and affordably carry astronauts and large cargo into deep space. This amendment builds upon NASA's many recent successful commercial partnerships. It established a major new program at NASA to maximize our commercial industry as the only way to enable a viable, permanent American presence on the Moon and Mars, building upon the historic Apollo missions that put a man on the Moon. This amendment is key to achieving NASA's long-term vision and President Trump's clear commitment to remaining #1 in space. Importantly, this amendment prioritizes private investment and requires competition and firm, fixed-price contracting to hold companies accountable and to protect the taxpayer against overruns that have plagued the agency in the past. And of course, it supports the billions of dollars of activity and thousands of jobs in my district and many districts who support these vital commercial endeavors. Again, I want to thank Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren for their leadership on this bill, as well as our chairman on the subcommittee, Ms. Fushi, for their good efforts, and I am proud to support this good amendment. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Thank you. I now recognize Representative Fushi from North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word. Mr. Chairman, I want to briefly note my support for commercial space capabilities and for the role they play in advancing U.S. leadership in space. At the same time, as Congress reaffirms NASA's authority, it is imperative that safety remains the top priority in any implementation of this authority. Congress must remain engaged in these capabilities, continue to develop, and be deployed. We want commercial space systems to succeed, and that success depends on strong oversight, clear standards, and rigorous attention to safety. Commercial space capabilities are essential to accomplishing our nation's and NASA's civil space goals, and I fully support the contributions of the commercial sector to U.S. leadership and in space exploration. And earlier last year, I was proud to see it in action firsthand. I will be following NASA's actions under this authority closely to ensure that any commercial services meet the highest safety and performance standards, and that this authority is exercised responsibly. I look forward to continuing to work with NASA and industry to ensure the continued safety, reliability, and success of these efforts. Thank you again to Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren for your leadership on this bill. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Any other discussion on this amendment? Mr. Van Epps, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support this amendment because America leads in space when NASA's technical excellence is paired with a dynamic, innovative commercial sector. By reaffirming our commitment to procuring deep space services from U.S. commercial providers, this amendment strengthens our ability to move cargo and crew safely and reliably to destinations like the Moon and Mars. This approach accelerates exploration, reduces costs for taxpayers, and ensures these critical capabilities remain American-built and American-operated. The strategic environment also demands clarity. China is investing heavily in state-directed space infrastructure and long-term lunar ambitions. America's advantage lies in an entrepreneurial commercial ecosystem anchored by NASA's expertise and guided by clear national policy. This amendment strengthens U.S. scientific leadership, it advances commercial space development, and helps keep the United States ahead in an increasingly competitive space domain. I would encourage my colleagues to support the chairman's amendment. Sir, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Any others wish to speak on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Babin Amendment Number 1. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Self of Texas. The clerk shall report Self Amendment 16.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Mr. Self of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Self of Texas for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment to H.R. 7273, which establishes a clear statutory objective for the United States to begin deploying the initial elements of a lunar outpost by December 31st, 2030. This amendment aligns congressional authorization with the administration's stated national policy to maintain American leadership and superiority in space. President Trump has made it clear that the Moon is no longer a distant scientific objective. It is a strategic domain with implications for national security, economic competitiveness, and long-term presence beyond low Earth orbit. Right now, federal space policy recognizes the importance of a sustained lunar presence, but that objective is not clearly anchored in statute with a defined timeline. This amendment fixes that gap. You may remember that President Kennedy personally set a goal of the end of the decade to put a man on the moon in the 60s. This amendment does not mandate a specific architecture, design, or procurement approach. It simply directs the administration to seek to establish the initial elements of a lunar outpost by the end of this decade. That provides clarity to NASA, industry partners, and our international allies about U.S. intent and seriousness. Other nations are not waiting. China has made no secrets of its plans for a permanent lunar presence. If the United States wants to remain the leading spacefaring nation, we must move beyond short-term missions and toward sustained infrastructure. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Thank you. Any further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, we've examined this amendment and urge its adoption. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. The question is on the adoption of self-amendment number 16. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Friedman of California. The clerk shall report Friedman Amendment 23.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Ms. Friedman of California. At the end of Title II, add the following. Section 2.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Friedman of California for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Chair Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren. I am proud to offer this amendment, which directs NASA to prioritize the return of Martian samples back to Earth as we proceed with future human and robotic missions to Mars. I represent California's 30th district, home to many of the engineers and scientists at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. These patriots have spent decades making American leadership in space a reality. And the mission to take us to Mars, the missions from Sojourner to Spirit to Curiosity to Perseverance were designed, built, and operated by my constituents. We've already collected these samples on the Martian surface, and if returned, they'll not only help inspire generations of scientists, engineers, and explorers, but will also help to answer the questions that we've been asking for centuries about our solar system and about our Earth, including questions about whether life existed outside of our planet. But to do that, we have to bring these samples home. And if we don't bring them back, decades of Americans' work, along with the investments that we as a nation have made, will have been for that mission half completed. That's why my amendment does something simple. It ensures that as NASA develops the technologies for future Mars missions, and I hope that there are many, both robotic and human, that we're factoring in the capability to retrieve these samples which have already been collected. This is also about American leadership. China has announced plans to return Mars samples by 2031. If we abandon this effort, we cede that scientific and technological leadership to one of our great competitors. Through the hard work of many of my constituents in Los Angeles, we can show our nation and the world that America is still a nation that does hard things. So let's finish this mission and bring these samples home. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Mr. Byer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd just like to speak in strong support of Congresswoman Friedman's amendment. Just to reiterate her points, we've already made an enormous investment in these samples, which are just lying on the surface of Mars waiting for someone to come pick them up. Number two, we struggle so much to understand the source of life here on this planet or the source of life in the universe. You go back to Enrico Fermi's famous question from the early 1950s, where is everybody? We have this huge universe. The best chance we have in the short run of understanding where life may be, where it's come from, where we will find it, will be this Mars sample. And finally, we all agree that the primary competition of the 21st century is China. We are basically, as we have done with trade in the last year, we will be handing this over to China in the years to come. So it's essential that we pass it back. I yield back.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay. There's no further discussion on the amendment. The question is on adoption of Friedman Amendment 23. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is amendment offered by Representative Rivas of California. The clerk shall report the Rivas Amendment number 25.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered
Without
by...
objection, the amendment is offered as read. I recognize Representative Rivas of California for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition.
Absolutely.
Ms. Rivas is not, has been detained at another committee, so I'd like to just mention what her amendment will do. It ensures that the NASA administrator applies proven robotic Mars landing technology, operational approaches, mission experiences, and scientific knowledge of NASA to advance human exploration missions. Much of this knowledge already lives at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, which is just outside of Ms. Rivas's district. JPL's work already includes development of the successful sky crane technology that is used as part of the entry, descent, and landing system. It has been successfully used in landing Mars rovers such as Curiosity and Perseverance. JPL has some of the brightest scientific minds, and this amendment ensures that NASA is hearing from them and others. The amendment also has a report for NASA to describe its planned applications, and coordination, of course, is key. I urge support for the amendment and yield back.
The woman yields. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none. The question is on the adoption of the Rivas Amendment 25. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted.
I gave you my list.
Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative McLean Delaney of Maryland. The clerk shall report McLean Delaney Amendment number 72.
Amendment to H.R. 7273.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I'd like to recognize the ranking member, since the gentleman from Maryland is not here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. NASA's Tracking Data Relay Satellite System, referred to as TDRS, has been the backbone of NASA's near-Earth mission communications for more than 4 decades. Now, it's enabled communication for a variety of critical missions, including NSF's South Pole Station. Now, as NASA begins to phase out TDRS, we need to be informed about how to responsibly transition from this system. The amendment requires NASA to get an independent expert review of the health and remaining lifetime of TDRS in the interagency missions that rely on it, and NASA's plan to retire or transition towards new communication services. The report would also explore the public sector applications of TDRS and ensure that alternatives meet the functional and security standards for NASA's space missions. This amendment is a step towards innovation and new partnerships, and will make sure that Congress can make fact-based, timely decisions. With that, Mr. Chairman, I urge adoption and yield back.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on this amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is now on adoption of McLean Delaney Amendment number 72. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Obernolte of California. The clerk shall report Obernolte Amendment number 2.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Obernolte of
Without
California.
objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I'd now like to recognize Representative Obernolte of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Expanding access to a range of platforms, both crewed and uncrewed, will significantly increase microgravity research capacity and accelerate scientific discovery. I think we all know that while the International Space Station is a vital national scientific asset, that it has real limitations. Available resources are constrained, and access to the station can take months or sometimes even years. Many research campaigns require the ability to conduct experiments in a serial manner, learning from prior results and refining subsequent work. Limiting payloads exclusively to the ISS can unnecessarily slow time to science. My amendment would provide NASA with the authority to develop a new commercial microgravity research payload service option for NASA researchers, commercial partners, and academic institutions. With the impending retirement of the ISS, the microgravity research community is rightly concerned about whether sufficient capacity will exist to continue this work in the years ahead without a change in NASA's approach. This committee, together with NASA's leadership, has the opportunity to anticipate and address this potential gap by ensuring resources are available to sustain microgravity research capacity through the use of commercial orbital platforms. I believe that doing so is essential if the United States is to maintain a competitive scientific advantage in areas such as pharmaceuticals, healthcare therapies, and advanced microelectronics. Expanded microgravity research capacity will also strengthen NASA's ability to advance human spaceflight research as we prepare for a sustained presence on the Moon and hopefully future missions to Mars. University research partners in particular will benefit from greater access to a broader range of platforms that better match specific scientific payloads to the most appropriate environment. This amendment would provide the flexibility needed for researchers to begin groundbreaking work on crew-tended platforms where human involvement may be necessary, and then scale iterative research to uncrewed platforms once these processes can be automated or remotely controlled. Ultimately, I believe this added flexibility will enhance NASA's overall research portfolio management and prioritization. I urge support of the amendment and its adoption, and I yield back.
Thank you, and I'd now like to recognize the representative from North Carolina, Ms. Fushi.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
You're right.
I rise in support of Congressman Obernolte amendment, which expands access to microgravity research in low Earth orbit and helps ensure that universities and research institutions can continue conducting critical research. This amendment allows NASA to responsibly leverage U.S. commercial providers and strengthens our leadership and presence in low Earth orbit. I thank Congressman Obernolte for his leadership and partnership on this amendment, and I believe this is a constructive step toward advancing U.S. space science and innovation. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. If there's any further discussion, hearing none, we will do the adoption of Obernolte Amendment Number 2. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Self of Texas. The clerk shall report Self Amendment Number 9.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Self of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I'd now like to recognize Representative Self of Texas for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment to H.R. 7273, which strengthens NASA's required transition planning by adding transparency around anticipated demand for crew transfer capabilities. Under current law, NASA is required to submit transition plans as it moves from legacy systems toward commercial and next-generation capabilities. However, those plans do not clearly describe NASA's expected demand for crew transfer services, nor do they provide Congress with visibility into projected availability or cost in the commercial marketplace. This amendment closes that gap. Specifically, it requires NASA to include in its transition plan reports a description of anticipated demand for crew transfer capabilities, along with information on projected availability and cost of commercial crew services. This information is essential for effective oversight. Crew transfer is a mission-critical capability, and Congress needs to understand whether NASA's plans are aligned with realistic commercial capability, pricing, and timelines. This amendment does not direct NASA to select a specific provider, procure additional services, or alter existing programs. It simply ensures that when NASA submits transition plans to Congress, those plans are grounded in an honest assessment of market availability and cost. This is not a new report. It's an added line on a report. As we rely more heavily on commercial partners for human spacecraft, Congress must have the information necessary to assess risk, avoid capability gaps, and ensure continuity of excess for our astronauts. This is a targeted transparency and planning amendment that strengthens oversight without constraining agency flexibility. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any
Chairman.
further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, we have examined this amendment and urge its adoption. I yield back.
Thank you. Any further? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of self-amendment number 9. Those in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes, excuse me, and the opinion of the chair, those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Kennedy of Utah. The clerk shall report Kennedy Amendment number 33.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Kennedy of Utah.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Kennedy of Utah for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Chairman Babin, I want to thank you for your tremendous leadership of this bipartisan NASA Reauthorization Act, which will continue and advance U.S. leadership in space. The Moon to Mars initiative is not only about achieving significant scientific and technological leaps, but also protecting our national security. We cannot allow the Chinese Communist Party to win this new age space race. That is why I'm offering my amendment to insert a section on space nuclear capabilities in this bill. To go further and faster into space, deep space exploration, NASA will need to develop nuclear propulsion and power systems. Chemical rockets have taken us far, but they are reaching their limits. Missions to the Moon and Mars, the outer planets, and beyond demand propulsion that is more efficient and power systems that can operate reliably where sunlight is weak or unavailable. The lunar night lasts nearly 2 weeks, bringing extreme cold and complete darkness. During that time, solar-powered systems shut down, batteries drain, and surface operations become risky or impossible. Nuclear power changes that equation. It allows astronauts not just to visit the Moon, but to live and work there safely and sustainably. Beyond the Moon, nuclear thermal propulsion can shorten travel times to Mars and increase mission flexibility. Advancing these technologies is critical. By adopting my amendment, Congress can give clear direction to NASA to develop detailed plans for demonstrating and implementing nuclear propulsion and power systems. I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I'd like to recognize the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, we have examined this amendment and urge its adoption. I yield back.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of the Kennedy Amendment number 33. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Byer of Virginia. The clerk shall report Byer Amendment 114.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Byer of
Without
Virginia.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Byer of Virginia for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren. First, I want to congratulate you on getting through 20% of the amendments, and it's not even 11 o'clock. So good work. I do want to see if you ever let the clerk finish reading an amendment once. Just kidding. Chairman, Ranking Member, my amendment calls for NASA and related agencies to conduct a study on bringing the standards for how we design our planes up to speed with the current airspace conditions, things like the composition of the air pressure, humidity, and temperature. Specifically, the study would use modern data to determine whether the standards we use to design planes, including the United States standard atmosphere, need to be updated. That atmosphere is referenced by plane designs, runway performance calculations, payload, range planning, and much more. But we used to update it regularly, but the last time we did it was 1976, so 50 years ago. It's past overdue for us to evaluate the standard and see if it needs to be modernized. We need to make sure that our aircraft are built to withstand our airspace conditions now, not ones 50 years ago. Clearly, they've changed a lot, just the amount of air traffic alone. And without the study, we cannot know whether any changes in our airspace condition that have occurred in the last 50 years mean we need to update the design. So this has already received bipartisan and multi-committee approvals. It's been included in previous NASA reauthorizations. The evil Senate has taken it out. And I very much hope that we include it in the NASA reauthorization this time. With that, I ask my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion on the amendment? There's no further discussion on the amendment. The question is on adoption of Byer Amendment 114. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Fushi of North Carolina. The clerk shall report Fushi Amendment 29.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Fushi of North
Without
Carolina.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Fushi of North Carolina for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a clarifying amendment to ensure that NASA's study of experimental aircraft technologies include all aircraft systems, including both the airframe and the propulsion systems that power these vehicles. This clarification is important given existing propulsion-focused demonstration efforts, such as NASA's high-tech and the electrified powertrain flight demonstration, which are central to advancing efficiency, sustainability, and performance in aviation. By explicitly including propulsion systems, the amendment helps prevent a narrow interpretation of the study and supports a more complete assessment of NASA's experimental aircraft efforts. I thank the Chair and Ranking Member and Subcommittee Chair Herodopoulos for their leadership, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yields back. Is there further discussion on this amendment? There's no further discussion on the amendment. The question is on adoption of Fushi Amendment number 29. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Sykes of Ohio. Clerk shall report Sykes Amendment number 97.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Sykes of Ohio.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I now like to recognize Ranking Member Lofgren to present this amendment.
Thank you. I want to thank Ms. Sykes for her amendment. Revolutionary airship concepts are being tested, and new materials and propulsion systems are researched that could potentially change how we move people and cargo, with applications in emergency response and even high-altitude energy generation. So I applaud Ms. Sykes' dedication to innovation. I would urge adoption of her amendment and yield back.
Yields back. Thank you very much. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on adoption of Sykes Amendment number 97. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes do have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment is on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Byer of Virginia. Clerk shall report Byer Amendment number 8.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Byer of Virginia. At the end of Title VI, add the following. Section 6, methane
Without
monitoring.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Byer of Virginia for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Chairman Babin, Ranking Member Lofgren, thank you very much. I'd also really like to thank my colleague from North Carolina, Pat Harrigan, for working really closely with me, our teams working together to co-lead this really important amendment. I want to point out that this bipartisan amendment would call for NASA to develop a consensus and science-based strategy to assess and evaluate our methane monitoring and detection capabilities. Mr. Chairman, this bill is a bill that Congressman Doug Lamborn and I got through the House in the 118th Congress. So we continue to work in a bipartisan way. And I also want to remind many of my Republican friends who are really interested in the continued development of the fossil fuel industry, this is very good for those trying to develop natural gas, because without the methane monitoring, the public support for the natural gas mining goes away. There are a lot of tools in use for methane emission today, but NASA satellites current in orbit and on-the-ground sensors, but they measure vastly different emission events that are often unconnected to the users, and they might only capture part of the picture of the emission event. So in short, we have many tools that need to do the job, but we need to find ways to put our systems, practices, and data together for vast improvement, and that's the whole point of the amendment. If we have the tools to monitor methane emissions, both small and large, but don't have the strategic organization, interconnectivity, or communication systems in place to share the data, then our users aren't going to be able to use it in a meaningful way. So this amendment, the Harrigan-Byer amendment, calls for a solid strategy upon developing, identifying the gaps, providing useful data, and giving those in need the tools to mitigate the methane emissions. And I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harrigan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I'd also like to thank my colleague, Mr. Beyer. I think we all know that we live in an era where energy security is national security. And today, thanks to decades of innovation and investment in American technologies, the United States is the world's leading producer and exporter of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. American leadership of LNG exports has not only fueled our economy, contributing over $400 billion to United States GDP, and supported hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs over the last decade, it has also provided our allies with a stable, cleaner alternative to energy supplies of hostile regimes. For example, just last month, roughly 60% of Europe's LNG imports came from the United States, helping reduce reliance on Russian pipeline gas. To maintain our competitive edge, U.S. industry will increasingly depend on the accurate monitoring of methane emissions across the entire natural gas supply chain. Currently, we have a blind spot. Today's methane characterization technologies are often driven by NGOs and nonprofits with implicit bias due to their radical climate change agendas. This technical gap puts America's carbon advantage and our energy dominance at risk. If we can't measure it, we cannot defend our lead in places like Europe, where, whether we like it or not, member nations are increasingly balancing cost and impacts. This is where NASA comes in. For decades, NASA has been the global gold standard for spectrometry, satellite deployment, and the management of massive data sets. It's nonpartisan, scientific data that we and our allies can trust. This amendment's about better science and better data to support American industry, not more red tape. I understand that some of my colleagues on my side of the aisle have concerns that methane monitoring would be used as some sort of speed camera to target our LNG industry and harm American energy dominance. I share those concerns. That's why my amendment makes it abundantly clear and grants no regulatory authority to NASA or any other government agency. The strategy created by this amendment would be an invaluable tool in our energy industry's belt. It is supported by every industry player that we contacted. It is not a thorn in their sides. By applying NASA's world-class research and development capabilities to advance American energy dominance, we aren't just supporting federal innovation. We are supporting the American worker, the American exporter, and the American taxpayer. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Beyer-Harrigan Amendment Number 8. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Excuse me. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Beyer of Virginia. The clerk shall report Beyer Amendment 116.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Beyer of
Without
Virginia.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Beyer of Virginia for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren. It's no surprise to this committee that NASA provides invaluable scientific training and early career development opportunities to young scientists and researchers. My seatmate here on the podium was a young particle physicist, Dr. Foster, and I think about the early career opportunities that he had. So the Early Career Investigator Program, the NASA Hubble Fellowship Program, the NASA Postdoctoral Program, the Future Investigators in NASA Earth and Space Science Technology, all these programs give postgraduate and early career researchers the unparalleled opportunity to support NASA's missions and to learn from our leading researchers and scientists. These prestigious programs support the career development and outstanding research of those who are just starting to build their careers and who in turn contribute fresh skill sets and talents to NASA. These programs are rewarding both for the early career scientists, but also for national scientific enterprise, because they have a very strong return on investment for NASA. And NASA funding has been central to the development of a strong STEM workforce in America. All the kids who look forward to studying math, physics, science, chemistry in high school and college and postgraduate so they can go to work for NASA. These excellent programs not only train the next generation and equip them with the skills to directly contribute to our scientific leadership, but they also enable the early career scientists to dedicate their talent and efforts to public service. And these investments that we make these programs are an invaluable return on our asset. And we have to prioritize them, and I hope all of my colleagues will support the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion on the Beyer amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of Beyer Amendment number 116. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by the Representative Bonamici of Oregon. Clerk shall report Bonamici Amendment number 75.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Bonamici of Oregon.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Bonamici of Oregon for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Lofgren, again, for your leadership on this bipartisan reauthorization. Something else that's bipartisan that I've been working on for quite some time is the marine debris reauthorization. We did pass that. Congress recently reauthorized the marine debris program on a bipartisan basis. Plastic pollution is a growing threat to ecological and public health, and it does not stay in one place. Every minute, the equivalent of a garbage truck full of plastic enters waterways and the ocean. It moves, it drifts, it fragments, and it spreads, and according to the Pew Charitable Trust, the flow of plastic into the ocean could reach 29 million metric tons per year by 2040. A bottle tossed inland can end up hundreds of miles away, wrapped around a propeller, tangled in fishing gear, or broken down into microplastics that enter the food we eat and the water we drink. Every year, millions of tons of debris move through the currents, and we can't see it. Across coastlines, we can't patrol, and into ecosystems that communities depend on for jobs, safety, and food. And NOAA's Marine Debris Program does heroic work in removing abandoned vessels, recovering ghost fishing gear, and intercepting plastics before they spread. Since 2022, the program has removed 15 million pounds of debris, but that program is responding to a moving target, often with incomplete information, and after damage already occurs. Now, some of you may be wondering why I'm talking about this in a NASA reauthorization bill, and I'm going to explain that, because NASA's suite of monitoring and data analysis products can help fill the gaps and actually support more targeted responses to plastic pollution. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, scientists use satellites to identify the chemical fingerprints of plastics from space. Existing Earth observation instruments can produce spectral signals that distinguish plastics from organic material, seaweed, or foam, and this data can then enable researchers to track how debris moves, where it accumulates, and how it breaks apart over time. My amendment seeks to bridge the gap between science and operations to save coastal ecosystems, taxpayer dollars, and time. My amendment would authorize NASA to run targeted pilot demonstrations that use existing satellites, data, and analytical tools to detect, characterize, and track marine debris. This means better information about what kind of debris is out there, where it's moving, and how fast conditions change. The amendment would also direct NASA and NOAA to formalize coordination through a memorandum of understanding to clearly define roles, share data responsibly, and focus on turning research into usable operational tools. My amendment would align the detection activities NASA already conducts to improve monitoring and decision support. NOAA's Marine Debris Program would inform these pilots so the data collected actually improves the work done in the field. Importantly, this amendment would maintain NASA's mission fidelity and keep marine debris cleanup and responsibilities under NOAA's expertise. Early information saves money. If responders know where debris concentrates before it beaches, they can act faster and at lower cost. And by connecting satellites to cleanup crews, we move from reaction to prevention. This amendment prioritizes stewardship, efficiency, and deploying existing data for smarter response. It strengthens NOAA's work by leveraging NASA's capabilities, and it helps communities protect ecosystems, jobs, and public health. I encourage all of my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back. Would anybody wish, any other representatives who wish to speak on this amendment? If there's no discussion on the amendment, the question is on adoption of Bonamici Amendment Number 75. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Fushi of North Carolina. The clerk shall report Fushi Amendment 27.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Fushi of North Carolina.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Fushi of North Carolina for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As ranking member of the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics, I am proud to support efforts that strengthen America's leadership in space and expand educational and workforce opportunities in aeronautics and aerospace. For decades, the National Space Grant College and Fellowship Program has served as a state and regional catalyst for building a strong STEM workforce, creating pathways for students into innovative high-tech careers, and supporting educators and institutions across the country. In North Carolina, the North Carolina Space Grant exemplifies this impact by supporting students, faculty, and research partners across our universities and community colleges, and by helping connect education and research to strengthen the state's aerospace and science workforce. Space grant programs also make effective use of federal investments. On average, for every dollar that NASA provides, space grant programs contribute an equal or greater amount from non-federal sources, maximizing resources available to students and institutions. Both NASA and the Space Grant Consortia have benefited from a long-standing matching policy in which approximately one non-federal dollar is matched to every 2 federal dollars. This amendment expresses the sense of Congress regarding the value of the National Space Grant Program and Congress's recognition of the importance of this long-standing matching funding policy. I meant to say this earlier, but I'd like to especially thank Chairman Haridopoulos for his leadership and partnership on the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics. I had the opportunity to visit your district last year and to send off our Crew 11 astronauts off to the ISS, and I have enjoyed working with you, particularly on our bipartisan resolution designating May 20th as National Women in Aerospace Day to acknowledge the achievements of American women in aviation, human spaceflight, and other related aerospace fields. So thank you again for your continued leadership in advancing aerospace and aviation policy. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Representative yields back. Any further discussion? If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on the adoption of Fushi Amendment 27. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Fong of California. The clerk shall report Fong Amendment 32.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Fong of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Fong of California for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good government amendment focused on efficiency and ensuring NASA's Mars missions are as coordinated and effective as possible. As NASA continues to expand its Mars exploration efforts, it is critical that the agency's directorates are working together in a deliberate and structured way. Currently, key Mars-related activities are spread across multiple mission directorates. The Mars Relay Network and Mars Telecommunications Orbiter reside within the Space Operations Mission Directorate. The Mars Future Missions Program falls under the Science Mission Directorate. Commercial Mars Payload Services is housed within the Exploration Systems Development Mission Directorate. While each of these efforts play an essential role, they are being developed in parallel across different parts of the agency. This amendment simply requires the NASA administrator to establish a process for cross-directorate collaboration to better coordinate Mars exploration and science activities. It also requires a briefing to the congressional committees of jurisdiction on how NASA plans to implement this coordination for current and future Mars missions. By improving communication and alignment across directorates, this amendment helps maximize the efficiency, reduce duplication, and ensure NASA's Mars missions are advancing in a cohesive and strategic manner. And with that, I urge adoption of the amendment and yield back.
Thank you. Is that all the discussion that we have? If hearing none,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
we've examined it and urge its adoption.
Okay. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, on the adoption of following amendment number 32, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Okay. If you take that for a minute. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative McBride of Delaware. The clerk shall report McBride Amendment 32.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. McBride of Delaware. At the end of Title VI, the following.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative McBride of Delaware for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Lofgren for your leadership on this bipartisan legislation. I offer this amendment because harmful algal blooms, or HABs, are an increasing threat to coastal states like Delaware and industries across the country. HABs occur in all bodies of water in the United States and can only be controlled but not stopped. From the west to the east coast, HABs contaminate drinking water, close beaches, disrupt fisheries, and pose serious public health risks, resulting in massive economic losses for coastal communities. In 2015, NOAA reported that HABs caused a $97 million loss in the commercial Dungeness crab fishery, with an additional $40 million lost in tourism spending in Washington state. In another study, 12 counties on Florida's west coast reported a total of $130 million in physical and economic damages due to red tide events between August and December 2018. And in my home state, as well as in Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina, millions of dollars have been lost in seafood sales. This amendment reaffirms NASA's commitment to using its existing earth science capabilities for the detection, forecasting, monitoring, and scientific understanding of harmful algal blooms in real time. Early warning and better forecasting can make a difference by allowing local officials to issue timely public health advisories, put in place plans to protect drinking water supplies, manage fisheries, and planned ecosystem responses more effectively. Finally, this amendment encourages the sharing of data and is a fiscally responsible way to maximize existing federal investments and translate science into real-world benefits. For those reasons, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Representative Yields, any further discussion on this amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of McBride Amendment 32. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Salinas of Oregon. The clerk shall report Salinas Amendment number 4.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Salinas of Oregon.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Salinas of Oregon for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I want to share my appreciation for the strong attention to wildfire response and mitigation in this bipartisan NASA bill. NASA's Fire Sense project plays a critical role in developing and deploying technologies that can improve wildfire response and mitigation. Difficulty coordinating across the many agencies and levels of government involved in wildfire management can make it challenging to maximize the on-the-ground benefits of NASA's work in this area. As NASA comes across barriers to effective coordination with federal, state, and local partners, my amendment is quite simple, just ensures that the agency provides actionable recommendations for improvement. Thank you, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back.
Representative yields back. Any further discussion on this amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question on the adoption of Salinas Amendment number 4. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Fushi of North Carolina. The clerk shall report Fushi Amendment 28.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Fushi of North Carolina. At the end of
Without
Title...
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Fushi of North Carolina for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Artificial intelligence is already transforming scientific research, including space science, across disciplines such as astronomy, physics, data analysis, and exploration. Leveraging these technologies is essential to advancing our understanding of the universe and maintaining U.S. leadership in science and innovation. At the same time as these technologies continue to evolve, it is important for Congress to ensure that there are clear and informed approaches to the development, use, and application of AI, especially in the sciences, where trust, data integrity, and scientific rigor are essential. Last Congress, I had the opportunity to serve on the bipartisan House AI Task Force, where members from both parties agreed that building trustworthy and transparent AI systems is critical to realizing the benefits of this technology while managing risks. To help assess both the opportunities and challenges of artificial intelligence in space science, this amendment directs the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine to conduct a study on the appropriate development, use, and application of AI in space science research. The National Academies have a long history of providing independent, objective guidance to inform federal science policy, making them uniquely well-suited to examine the complex and rapidly evolving intersection of artificial intelligence and space science. This study will help identify best practices and guidelines, opportunities to strengthen training and education, and mechanisms for continued engagement between NASA, the scientific community, and other stakeholders to support the responsible and trusted use of AI in research. I thank the chairman and ranking member again for their leadership on this bill, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Representative yields. Any further discussion on this amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on adoption of Fushi Amendment 28. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Rivas of California. The clerk shall report Rivas Amendment 24.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Rivas of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Rivas of California for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Rivas is walking in right now.
Excellent. Thank you. You're up.
He's not here, so there's...
Rivas Amendment number 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I'm offering an amendment which will help low-income students and underserved communities across America access STEM and NASA programs. My amendment ensures that NASA's Office of STEM Engagement conducts intentional outreach to communities and students like mine in the San Fernando Valley who are too often forgotten. It doesn't matter if a student comes from a rural town or a big city. They deserve the opportunity to learn about STEM, space, and the important work that NASA is doing. As the co-chair of the Bipartisan STEM Education Caucus, I know it's essential for Congress to provide students with life-changing opportunities to engage with NASA's programs and be introduced to potential careers in STEM and in space. When I was young, I was exposed to computer science and learned about technology as a little girl, and it really changed my life. This experience as a young elementary school student led me to a STEM career and eventually to study at MIT, where I was an engineer and later on a nonprofit STEM educator and now the halls of Congress. This is why I think it's very critical that we have the best of the best working to strengthen NASA, and that starts with opening opportunities for all students regardless of their background. My amendment also instructs NASA to submit a report on their efforts to conduct outreach and training for STEM activities in low-income schools and communities. This report will help to ensure that our nation's future in space gives all communities a seat at the table. STEM education is vital to the continued success of the NASA program. I'm proud that my amendment will offer all Americans that chance. I urge support for my amendment, and I yield back.
Representative yields. I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Lofgren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate this amendment. I have a district that is partly Silicon Valley, but also extends all the way down past King City in California. And those rural areas, those kids really don't get a chance to be exposed. And they're smart too, so I think those rural kids are really going to benefit from this amendment. I appreciate it and yield back.
The woman yields. Any other discussion on this amendment? If no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of Rivas Amendment number 24. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Salinas of Oregon. The clerk shall report Salinas Amendment number 3.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Salinas of Oregon.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize Representative Salinas of Oregon for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm committed to ensuring young people across the country have access to the tools they need to pursue skilled technical careers that support NASA and its commercial partners. In Oregon, we have a robust ecosystem of small businesses, from machinists to electronics and software companies, that contribute to NASA's work and the space economy more broadly. My amendment would encourage NASA, through its STEM outreach programs, to partner with the private sector across the supply chain to help bring more young people into these career pathways. While it may not be obvious from the outside, there are opportunities for workers across America to participate in literal moonshots. I hope that my amendment can help us make those opportunities more visible for our constituents and tap into the incredible wealth of talent across all of our communities. For these reasons, I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back.
Representative yields back. Any further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on adoption of Salinas Amendment number 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Stevens of Michigan. The clerk shall report Stevens Amendment 26.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Stevens of Michigan.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Lofgren, for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge my colleagues to support Ms. Stevens' amendment to strengthen the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS, authorization. This is a cornerstone of NASA's mission to develop a sustainable lunar economy. CLPS has provided cost-effective access to the lunar surface for science and technology demonstrations and laid the groundwork for more complex, larger missions in the years ahead. During last year's CLPS hearing, stakeholders gave us their recommendations on how to leverage this innovative model to support Artemis, establish a sustained cadence of missions, and develop a robust lunar economy, and the amendment builds on the bill by incorporating the recommendations that we heard during the hearing. It expands the use beyond science payloads to support Artemis missions and the broader development of sustained lunar operations, incorporates lessons from proven commercial programs, such as COTS and commercial cargo, to strengthen the development of a lunar economy, and additionally requires NASA to brief us, the Congress, on the potential use of block buys, multi-launch contracts that reduce costs. I urge this amendment be adopted so NASA can continue to innovate and accelerate lunar access, and yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Any further discussion on this amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on adoption of Stevens Amendment number 26. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Amo of Rhode Island. The clerk shall report Amo Amendment number 6.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Amo of Rhode Island.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I now recognize Representative Amo of Rhode Island for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding this markup and for including my bill with Congressman Kane, the Drone Safety Enhancement Act, in the underlying NASA Reauthorization Act. You know, when Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the moon, he called it one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. But that moment didn't happen in isolation. The images the world remembers were relayed through ground stations in Australia before being broadcast globally. From the very beginning, America's space achievements have depended on strong partnerships with allies. Apollo 11 was a leap made by mankind for mankind. It was not just an American triumph, it was a global one. Space exploration isn't a solo endeavor. It has always required collaboration across agencies, across borders, and across allies around the world. And that remains true today as well. That's why I'm offering an amendment to strengthen space cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. My amendment would add the text of the Taiwan and American Space Assistance Act, or TASA Act, to the NASA Reauthorization Act. This would help NASA, NOAA, and the State Department coordinate more effectively with Taiwan on space exploration. Encouraging deeper collaboration between NASA and the new Taiwan Space Agency is a win-win and can happen in so many key areas like satellite programs, atmospheric research, and science education. This will strengthen scientific discovery, advance shared research, and reinforce partnership in a region that matters deeply to our future. I'm proud to work on this bipartisan effort with TASA Act lead, Congressman French Hill, and Space Subcommittee Chair, Mike Haridopoulos. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on my amendment to build on America's tradition of leading in space innovation in the Indo-Pacific. Thank you, and I yield. I yield back. Thank you.
Representative yields. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on adoption. Sorry, Mr. Haridopoulos, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to submit for the record a letter from our chairman, Chairman Hill, from the Financial Services Committee in support of this good amendment, if I could.
So ordered.
I want to also applaud the effort made forth by the sponsor, Representative Amo, from the great northeastern part of the country, and I really want to recognize that this is a reality we can no longer ignore. The fact is that space is not benign or an uncontested domain. It is central to our economic security, our national defense, and our ability to deter aggression by authoritarian regimes. Taiwan is a critical democratic partner and a cornerstone of stability in the Indo-Pacific. And I think this good amendment offered by Representative Amo is on the right track. And in the spirit of bipartisanship, which we've seen throughout the day, I am proud to support this. And I really appreciate the efforts of our chairman on the Financial Services Commission, the chairman from Arkansas, French Hill, for pushing this letter for the record. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. The question is on the adoption of Amo Amendment number 6. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Begich of Alaska. Clerk shall report Begich Amendment number 92.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Begich of Alaska. Add at the end of Title IV the following. Section 404, Department of Energy and NASA Research and Development Coordination. A, in general.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Begich of Alaska for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment adds my bill, H.R. 1368, the DOE and NASA Interagency Research Coordination Act, to the underlying legislation. The U.S. Department of Energy and NASA are aligned in their mission to advance scientific discovery and expand our knowledge and understanding of the universe.
The amendment authorizes DOE and NASA to carry out collaborative research and development activities that advance shared mission requirements and priorities. This includes R&D in critical technology areas like propulsion systems, quantum information systems, high-energy physics, data analytics, and radiation health effects. By codifying DOE and NASA's R&D partnership, this legislation would strengthen the ability of these agencies to share critical research resources and infrastructure, including DOE's research reactors and computing facilities. This bipartisan bill earned unanimous support in the Science, Space, and Technology Committee and passed the House earlier this Congress. I thank my colleague, Representative Whitesides, for co-leading this bipartisan effort, and I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back. I recognize the ranking member, Ms. Lofgren.
I just want to thank not only Mr. Begich, but Mr. Whitesides, former Chief of Staff for NASA, for co-sponsoring this amendment and urge its adoption. Yield back.
Hearing no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of Begich Amendment number 92. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Byer of Virginia. The clerk shall report Byer Amendment 115.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Byer of Virginia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Byer of Virginia for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your patience.
Yes, sir.
There's 45 amendments. There's a lot of paper over here. And I want to thank Congressman Suhas Subramanian from Virginia for partnership on this amendment. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, in the One Big Beautiful Bill this past summer, the Senate added a concerning provision that called for the transfer of a space vehicle meeting certain conditions. The Space Shuttle Discovery is now located at Smithsonian's Udvar-Hazy Center in Virginia, and it's an example of a space vehicle that could be forcibly relocated across the country due to this language. The Discovery flew orbital missions from 1984 to 2011 and retired as the oldest and most accomplished orbiter in NASA's fleet. It flew 39 missions, spent 365 days in space, flew over 150 million miles, flew to the International Space Station 13 times, and was the vehicle that deployed the Hubble Space Telescope. And yet, the Discovery is in pristine shape even now due to the intensive care the Smithsonian has dedicated to its protection and maintenance. It's unquestionably a safe and optimal environment, and has brought countless educational benefits to million visitors from across the National Capital Region. But Congresswoman Subramanian and I have deep concerns about the transfer of such a space vehicle. The cross-country relocation costs are likely to be exorbitant and would almost certainly physically harm the vehicle. My amendment prevents the administrator from causing physical harm to the space vehicle through such a location. The amendment also calls for the administrator to submit to Congress a report on the cost of and potential for physical harm to a space vehicle from a relocation. Our space vehicles are national treasures that memorialize our storied and vibrant history of space exploration. They must be treated as such. I certainly understand that our distinguished chairman has the Johnson Space Center and a desire to have important parts of space history there to display. I very much respect that. We don't want to stand in the way of Texas getting that kind of treasure. It shouldn't be a Virginia against Texas debate here, even though Texas was founded by Virginians, Samuel Austin Stephen Eustis. However, I would love to withdraw this amendment with the understanding that Chairman Babin and our teams will work together to make sure that a meaningful space vehicle can be moved to Texas without damaging the vehicle, without preserving the integrity of our assets for generations to come.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Mr. Byer, and it would be tragic if Houston were to receive a vehicle that had been damaged in transit, and that's why I understand why you have offered this amendment. I'm committed to working with you, as we have on many occasions in the past, and I think we can ensure that we find a solution to this problem.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to withdraw this.
The gentleman withdraws. Thank you very much. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Gillen of New York. The clerk shall report Gillen Amendment 21.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Ms. Gillen of New York. At the end of Title 8, add the following.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Gillen of New York for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Well, thank you, Chairman Babin, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding today's bipartisan markup. I am proud to support H.R. 7273, the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026. This legislation will strengthen American leadership in space and exploration and support critical science and technology research. My amendment today will help expand NASA's research and technology partnerships across the country. NASA's collaborative partnerships have been instrumental in advancing its research mission, increasing access to space and boosting the space economy. For instance, NASA's Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium brings together government, academia, nonprofit institutions, and the private sector to identify and solve the hardest problems of lunar exploration. Consortium members have already demonstrated successes on the lunar surface and have developed new innovative technologies which will be deployed in near-term missions. This model is worth replicating. That is why I'm offering this amendment, which would direct NASA Administrator to support the expansion of research and technology consortia across the country. It also directs the Administrator to provide technical support and report to Congress on where new partnerships can help maximize NASA's innovation across our country. These partnerships between the private and public sectors will spur innovation across NASA mission areas, grow our regional space economies, and build our nation's space workforce. This amendment will help ensure that NASA is working with partners that have the research and economic capacity to meet this moment, but may not be located within the traditional academic or industry clusters. My district, for example, on the South Shore of Long Island, has a long history of powering America's space program. The original lunar module, Eagle, was built on Long Island. Long Island is home to Brookhaven National Laboratory, exceptional universities such as Hofstra, Stony Brook, Malloy, and Adelphi, and a thriving private sector that spurs innovation. These institutions are willing and able partners if NASA has the capacity to work with them. Mr. Chairman, as NASA undertakes its most ambitious missions yet, this amendment will ensure that we are meeting the challenge, catalyzing research, and growing our economy. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Representative yields. If there's any further discussion, hearing none, the question is on adoption of Gillen Amendment 21. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Herodopoulos of Florida. Clerk shall report Herodopoulos Amendment 29.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Mr. Herodopoulos of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Herodopoulos of Florida for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past 2 decades, America's space enterprise has been transformed. Billions in private investment has sparked new technologies, services, and entire industries serving both commercial and national needs. That investment is truly paying off, creating jobs, driving innovation, and unlocking opportunities unimaginable just a few years ago. As throughout history, people move towards opportunity. Soon, not just a few, but thousands of Americans will earn their living in space. This vision, space is the next frontier of freedom, led by President Trump to call for a permanent lunar outpost, is inspiring a new generation of entrepreneurs and engineers. As humanity expands into space, we carry with us Western values of freedom, opportunity, and the rule of law. Just as America was founded 250 years ago in a new world, today we can secure those values for the next 250 years, extending our civilization into orbit, cislunar space, the moon, and beyond. Government does not need to build these settlements, but Congress must ensure America supports and protects citizens who carry the free world into the solar system. I also want to thank Congressman Begich, Whitesides, Kennedy, and Van Epps for their amendment as well. They helped us a lot. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to speak in support of this amendment and appreciate the leadership of Mr. Herodopoulos on it. For over 20 years, I've advocated for close cooperation between NASA and the private sector. When we get that relationship right, we achieve great things in aerospace. We're efficient with the taxpayer dollar, and we lead the world. This amendment would simply restate existing principles of American space policy. I'd also like to make one note about a crucial near-term policy area, the next generation of American space stations. NASA's plans to follow the ISS with commercial space stations working in partnership with NASA will enable more efficient allocation of resources in LEO, freeing up more resources for exploration and discovery beyond LEO. The Commercial LEO Destinations Program, or CLD, is poised to move into its next phase of competition. We've seen the lessons learned from the commercial cargo and commercial crew transportation programs that maintaining competition and multiple providers helps keep services affordable and provides both resilience and redundancy in the face of technical challenges. I believe that NASA should continue the CLD program with multiple providers as a direct application of the lessons learned from commercial crew and cargo. Time is of the essence. With the ISS set to retire by the end of 2030, NASA needs to act with urgency on this procurement and release an RFP as soon as possible. Thank you, and I yield back.
Representative yields back. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Utah, Dr. Kennedy.
Chairman Babin, thank you for the time, and I support the amendment by my colleague, Representative Herodopoulos, that requires the administration to the maximum extent possible to seek and encourage the fullest commercial use of space. Commercial space is no longer a distant dream. It's an opportunity unfolding right now with real benefits for people on Earth. There are possibilities for space mining, power generation, data centers, and many other applications. As a family practice doctor, I'm excited about the possibilities that can be achieved with microgravity. In this environment, pharmaceutical research and production can advance in ways that are impossible on Earth. In microgravity, proteins and crystals grow more uniformly, allowing researchers to better understand disease mechanisms and design more effective drugs. Experiments conducted on commercial space platforms have already contributed to research on cancer treatments, neurodegenerative diseases, and rare conditions. These breakthroughs have the potential to shorten drug development timelines, reduce costs, and ultimately save lives. Commercial space expands access by lowering costs and increasing launch opportunities. It enables private companies, startups, and research institutions to turn space into a working laboratory for human health and discovery. I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and I'd like to recognize Representative Lofgren, a ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak very quickly about the amendment. I'm not opposed to the amendment, and I commend the gentleman from Florida for the amendment. I totally support the thrust of the gentleman's argument. I've long been a strong supporter of the commercial space industry. However, I'm hoping that we can continue to talk and work with the gentleman as the bill moves forward on potentially refining language as we get more feedback from various stakeholders. And with that, I have no objection to the amendment being adopted, and in fact, do urge its adoption and yield back.
Yields back. Thank you very much. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on the adoption of Herodopoulos Amendment number 29. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative McCormick of Georgia. The clerk shall report McCormick Amendment 22.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. McCormick of Georgia.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize Dr. McCormick of Georgia for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we prepare to return to the moon and boldly go where no one has gone before, we need a talented workforce that supports those goals. My amendment builds on the committee's work by ensuring that NASA creates a clear pipeline from early classrooms in college into mission-relevant jobs. NASA already conducts STEM engagement, but many students lack clarity on how to translate that into real jobs supporting NASA missions. My amendment helps close that gap by encouraging skill-based pathways tied to high-demand areas, including aerospace engineering, advanced manufacturing, software, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence.
Developing this pipeline and cultivating homegrown talent is crucial for our competitiveness and our ability to retain and remain ahead of our foreign adversaries. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to ensure that we can develop a workforce of tomorrow that will help us succeed in the next chapter of space exploration. And with that, I yield.
Representative yields. If there's no further discussion, I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. McCormick for this amendment. NASA and really the whole space industry have a growing need for skilled technical workforce. The amendment builds on a provision in the underlying bill addressing gaps in the skilled technical workforce by helping to connect students with information and opportunities. I will say that when I visit with space companies, one of the things they raise all the time is not just, I mean, there's a shortage of people at the PhD level, but there is a strong shortage at the technical level, which is really hampering their success. So I do think this builds on the earlier amendment, making sure that, you know, your zip code doesn't prevent you from being a participant. We need, we need to make sure that all of the people of this country have an opportunity to get the skill training they need so that we can be prosperous and have these companies succeed. So I do support this amendment, and I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlewoman yields. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on the adoption of the McCormick Amendment number 22. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. You bet. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative McLean Delaney of Maryland. The clerk shall report McLean Delaney Amendment number 28.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. McLean Delaney of
Without
Maryland.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I now recognize Mrs. Lofgren from California to speak on this amendment for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McLean Delaney has been on the floor and I think is on her way over here, but I will discuss this amendment and hopefully she will be here in time for the next amendment. As we know, NASA and NOAA have a strong, productive partnership on developing the nation's weather satellites, where NASA manages the acquisition on NOAA's behalf. As was mentioned by Ms. McLean Delaney in the markup of the Weather Act in September, the debacle with the NPOs underscores the importance of maintaining this successful partnership. Now, we heard as recently as our weather satellite hearing last month that the administration is still thinking about changes to this successful partnership. This is a high priority for Ms. McLean Delaney, as it is for me, and I think the whole committee and the nation. We have to get this right. Now, I know, Mr. Chairman, you agreed to work with Ms. McLean Delaney on the NOAA side of this when she offered and withdrew a related amendment to the Weather Act. I think it will be very important to resolve this on both the NASA and NOAA sides of these bills, and we all appreciate your involvement, Mr. Chairman, and your continuing commitment to work with us on these issues. And because of that, I think Ms. McLean Delaney intended to offer this amendment and then withdraw it, understanding that we're going to continue to work on this together. And so on her behalf, I will do that.
The amendment is withdrawn, and you have my pleasure to work with you folks. Okay, the next amendment. Next amendment on the roster is offered by, again, Representative McLean Delaney of Maryland. The clerk shall report McLean Delaney Amendment number 30.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. McLean Delaney of
Without
Maryland.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. Now, I'd like to recognize Ms. Lofgren, the ranking member, for to explain this amendment.
Well, again, this supports all the NASA centers. I had the great opportunity to meet with the new administrator when he visited Ames Research Center just last week. I know he is meeting with going to all of the centers, and what he said was that he he really doesn't envision closing any of the centers. They all provide a very important capacity for NASA. And so I do think this offered amendment is really important to communicate with the workforce on future planning. I think it's completely consistent with what the administrator intends in any case, but I think the Congress being in sync with the administrator and giving that reassurance to our workforce is very, very important. And I would ask unanimous consent that Ms. McLean Delaney have an opportunity to submit her comments in the record, since she was detained on the floor of the House and unable to be here to offer this amendment. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Without objection, so ordered. Now I'd like to recognize Representative Beyer from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd just like to weigh in. Having visited Goddard to see the James Webb Space Telescope before it was launched and the huge mirror, it was
good,
remarkable. And then having visited Goddard again to see the Nancy Grace Roman Infrared Space Telescope, which I hope will be launched later this year. These are probably the two most important investments in understanding our universe in our lifetimes. And it's really important that these space centers like Goddard be maintained. And it's a great amendment, and I just want to add my support to it. Yield back.
Representative yields back. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on the adoption of McLean Delaney Amendment number 30. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Salinas of Oregon. The clerk shall report Salinas Amendment number 19.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Ms. Salinas of Oregon. At the end of Title 8, add the following. STEM workforce.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Salinas of Oregon for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would direct NASA to study the impacts that this administration has had on immigration enforcement tactics and how that has impacted our nation's competitiveness. In the past year, we've seen the administration and its agents terrorize people, violate their rights, and, as we just saw in Minnesota, kill American citizens in broad daylight. We've seen the president's masked agents drag graduate students off the street into unmarked cars, and we've seen them weaponize the student visa process to punish people for First Amendment protected speech. A recent report in Science indicates that over 10,000 PhDs left the federal government last year. How many of those were foreign-born workers who took the fork in the road because they were afraid for themselves or their family members? Immigrants play a critical role in our STEM economy. They make up over half of PhDs in key STEM fields like engineering. They make up about a third of U.S. Nobel Prize winners in STEM. They have filed over a quarter of U.S. patents. Our job in this committee is to support the federal research and development that will drive the economy of the future and ensure America's competitiveness on the global stage. The president's tactics are pushing away talent and undermining the good bipartisan work, like we are seeing today in this NASA bill, that we all work so hard to move forward. These unhinged and self-defeating tactics need to end. I'm withdrawing this amendment to make sure that we can move forward with our markup today, but I urge my colleagues to stand against the sweeping damage that this administration is doing to our space research industry. Thank you, and I yield back.
The amendment is withdrawn. No other discussion. Excuse me. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Self of Texas. The clerk shall report Self Amendment number 14.
Amendment to H.R. 7273 offered by Mr. Self of Texas. At the end of Title 8.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Self of Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment to H.R. 7273, about as simple an amendment as we can have. It repeals outdated and unnecessary reporting requirements in Title 51 of the U.S. Code, makes a narrow technical correction to the NSA Authorization Act of 2000. NASA already reports extensively to Congress through budget justifications, GAO reviews, Inspector General reports, and direct engagement with this committee. Layering on additional legacy reports does not strengthen our oversight. We should be reducing bureaucratic drag at NASA, not institutionalizing it. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Ms. Lofgren.
We've examined this amendment and agree with it and urge its adoption. I yield back.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. McLean Delaney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank you for recognizing me, and I understand that amendment number 30, which I had submitted, did pass by vote, but I would like to say a few remarks on it. It is an incredibly important amendment because it is a cornerstone of NASA's success and our strong network of NASA field centers. It's staffed by the best scientific minds and most dedicated civil servants in the world, and these centers are really repositories of institutional knowledge, technical expertise, and mission-critical capabilities that can never be replaced. As 85% of NASA's mission work is performed at field centers, including in Maryland, where I represent the 6th District of Maryland, but Goddard Space Flight Center is in my home state of Maryland. And just last month, I was privileged to meet some of the Goddard staff to get an update on the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, and I'm glad to report that they are under budget and ahead of schedule. Really incredible. That's Maryland's Space Force in action. The National Academy's 2024 report on NASA raised serious concerns about the centralization of the agency's staffing, and the report warned that the consolidation of workforce and decision-making authorities at NASA has hurt our ability to innovate and keep pace with international competition. I had urged the president to rescind his executive order banning unions so that Goddard engineers, scientists, and technical associations can continue advocating for Maryland workers, and I urge NASA leadership to manage the agency with transparency so that they can have the trust of their employees. This amendment will also help build more trust by establishing center councils to improve dialogue and collaboration while we await restoration of collective bargaining rights. And this amendment also strengthens internal research and development at NASA, and with Goddard leading the way. IRAD also allows best scientists and engineers to pursue emerging technologies that are too long-term or uncertain for private industry, and some technologies are best developed without a private-driven mindset, but rather by the spirit of discovery. Without robust support of IRAD at NASA, we might risk losing that technical edge. So in closing, by piloting a new programming supporting IRAD at Goddard, my amendment, which I'm so happy did pass by vote, builds on the center's existing strengths while creating a model that can spread across the nation. And it will leverage the brain trust that NASA has built to, spur innovation and bring competitiveness to the next revolution in space. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the self-amendment number 14, hearing none. Those opposed say, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Self of Texas. Clerk shall report self-amendment 20.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Self of Texas. At the end of Title 8.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Self of Texas for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of my amendment to H.R. 7273, which directs NASA to study its policies and approval processes related to additive manufacturing, including 3D printing, and to report back to Congress with recommendations. Additive manufacturing is an area of growing importance in the space industry. It has the potential to lower cost, shorten development times, and increase resilience across space missions, particularly as we move towards sustained operations below low Earth orbit. This amendment does not mandate the use of 3D printed components, nor does it alter any safety or certification standards. It simply asks NASA to take a hard look at its existing policies, identify barriers to wider utilization, and recommend ways to address those challenges. As the United States pursues long-term lunar and deep space objectives, including sustained infrastructure and in-space manufacturing, Congress needs a clear understanding of whether NASA's internal processes are enabling innovation or unintentionally standing in the way. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Representative yields back. Any further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, we support this amendment and urge its adoption.
Thank you. The no further discussion on this amendment. The question is on the adoption of self-amendment number 20. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Stevens of Michigan. The clerk shall report Stevens Amendment number 7.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Ms. Stevens of Michigan.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Ms. Is she here? Yes, there she is. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment that I think you might like. Okay, so this committee bats above its weight time and time again. I mean, we're passing major bills like CHIPS and Science. We're doing this incredible reauthorization, and a lot of times we have to pick up the slack of other committees, particularly on critical areas that are overlooked. Our friends at NASA have reached out to us about this challenge with unmanned aircraft systems that is leading to drones that are coming to the NASA facilities. This is not a rare thing. We have growing threats to astronaut safety, launch operations, and some of the most sensitive space technology. In 2024, there were 415 drone incursions in the NASA airspace. In 2025, that number rose to 496, a nearly 20% increase. We've had more than 900 in 2 years. Okay, this is a systems vulnerability. Our friends at NASA have asked us to achieve the ability to detect and monitor these UASs. They're not asking for defense capabilities. They're not asking to replace law enforcement. But my goodness, they gotta know what's flying around when they're trying to do launches and when they've got astronauts. This is an open committee hearing, okay? China's watching. And we got this great opportunity that NASA has come out in support of today to add to this reauthorization. The Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's the most violated NASA airspace in the country, despite being right next to a military launch facility. At the other end, we got Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, also 100 miles from the nearest military installation. These are being left exposed. And obviously, Mr. Chairman, you know very well about the Johnson Space Center. So I'm introducing this amendment to give NASA the counter unmanned aircraft system authorities to protect their air traffic. Certainly, we're going to have the privacy components in here. We're going to have oversight. And there's also a little sunset component. But until we add this into this reauthorization of this remarkable bill that we've been working on for several terms now, I think we're selling these guys out, and we're giving our adversaries a leg up. And so I'm urging my colleagues, in the spirit of the traditional bipartisan nature of this committee, through the lens of China competition, certainly not something anyone doesn't want to have not taking seriously on their record. I certainly take China competition very seriously as a member of Congress from Michigan, so that we don't have these unmanned drones being undetected by NASA. Could you imagine all this work? You get ready for a launch, you're getting ready to go, and you can't even detect a drone. I mean, come on. This is NASA. This is the great space race. Let's win it. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping you and this whole committee will join me in voting yay for this amendment.
I thank the representative from Michigan. She's very persuasive. However, the growing number of drone incursions at NASA centers and facilities in recent years is without question alarming. It poses a serious risk to both our safety and national security. Any threat to the integrity of NASA facilities is absolutely unacceptable. We must ensure robust capabilities are in place to protect them from drone incursions. And while I rise in opposition to your amendment before us today, my vote should not be interpreted as opposition to its underlying intent. In fact, the opposite is true. I'm firmly committed to safeguarding NASA facilities across the country. However, given the stakes, it is essential that we take the right approach to ensuring effective capabilities to address these drone incursions. This is a significant amendment. It spans 18 pages. It is more substantive than many standalone bills that we consider. It deserves the committee's full consideration. In considering drone mitigation, NASA undoubtedly has a role to play. However, other federal agencies also have relevant authorities that should be leveraged. For example, many of the facilities most affected are co-located with Department of Defense installations that already possess broader authorities than those granted under this amendment, as you mentioned, in Florida. A coordinated approach to drone mitigation, one that incorporates these complementary authorities, would enhance our ability to keep NASA facilities safe and secure. Moreover, such an approach would promote efficiency by avoiding the duplication and confusion that could result from a patchwork of separate agency efforts. A holistic approach is absolutely necessary here, and I'm committed to working with the gentlelady moving forward to ensure that this is done correctly, earns broad support, and can ultimately be signed into law by the President if she is willing to withdraw this amendment, with my commitment to continue working on this together. Yield back.
Mr. Chairman?
You're recognized. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the gentlewoman from Michigan for her leadership on this amendment. You're correct that it is a very meaty, lengthy amendment, and importantly so. Unmanned aerial systems or drones are ubiquitous in today's world. There's a lot of value to them. They can help us, but as has been mentioned, drones can and also are being used for nefarious purposes. A low-flying drone carrying a camera can really pose risk to launch operations by NASA as well as national security. Nearly 500 incursions occurred last year at NASA facilities, a 20% increase over the year before, and the problem's getting worse. It's not getting better. I think I understand the point that you're making, that there are this is a complex issue, but NASA has asked us to do something along these lines. And so I would hope that we might be able to adopt this amendment and then work through additional changes between now and the floor in response to the requests that we have from NASA. And if that's not possible, obviously you and the gentlelady will continue talking. But I think moving forward would be an important step and a message, actually, to the nefarious actors, probably China, who are interfering with our national security in this way. And with that, I yield back.
Absolutely. Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'd like to recognize the representative from North Carolina, Mr. Harrigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I absolutely understand the ranking member's comments, and I absolutely want to compliment my colleague from Michigan Ms. Stevens on properly recognizing a very real problem that exists and fully understand that NASA has asked for this. I'd just like to say that from the science, space, and technology position, I think that we're putting this into the wrong box. This will create conflicting authorities with the Department of War, specifically within the Space Force. Detect doesn't really do anything without defeat. And I would suggest that the proper committee of jurisdiction for this would be the House Armed Services and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and this needs to be nested underneath the Department of War's JIATA 401 and the Golden Dome initiatives. But you're exactly on point. I've read through your amendment. It's incredibly well-reasoned, and we're trying to achieve the same thing for the country. I would just advise that we do it in the right way, and please don't take our opposition to this, which I do recommend the committee oppose this amendment. Don't take that. Take it in the friendliest possible way, please. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Yes, ma'am. You're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I just have a brief addition, which is this friendly debate should not at all disrupt the kindly affliction that we have for one another and the respect that I have for your leadership. In the minority party, I fight for my crumbs, and I also look for the watermarks. And so I do think it would be important to move this to a committed vote when we get to that moment in the debate, to send a signal to potential committees of jurisdiction and to send a signal that maybe we're not getting everything we need or want in this critical reauthorization. And this will be a footnote or a peg to continue to pursue the issue at hand. And I'm glad that the amendment, the 18 pages, was read by my colleague from North Carolina. We're proud of the amendment and the work that's gone into it. This didn't come out of nowhere, obviously. Our friends at the agency are asking for it. But that's at this point in time where I would like to proceed.
Is there further discussion, anybody? So let me get this straight. Are you withdrawing the amendment, or you want to proceed?
I want to move it to a vote.
Okay,
Just as our watermark.
I got you. If there's no further discussion on the amendment,
Recorded vote. Yeah.
recorded vote.
Recording.
Yeah,
vote.
we'll do that. The question is on the adoption of the Stevens Amendment number 7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not adopted. We will do a recorded vote. It has been requested pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11. Proceedings on this vote will be postponed. Thank you. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Webster of Florida. Clerk shall report Webster Amendment number 31.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Webster of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Webster of Florida for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment will require NASA to notify Congress within no later than 15 days after the administrator becomes aware if a signatory to the Artemis Accords violates a transfer of technical data provision. It will also require NASA to include a description of the violation, any actions that might be taken in response to such violation. This amendment is about accountability, transparency, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion?
We support the amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Lofgren, any further? If no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of Webster Amendment number 31. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered, again, by Representative Webster of Florida. The clerk shall report Webster Amendment number 30.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Webster of Florida. At the
Without
end,
objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I now recognize Representative Webster of Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment will ensure that the United States, not Beijing, remains the global leader by advancing consensus-based standards. This will allow American innovation to thrive and puts the country first. It will direct NASA to work with NIST and to promote voluntary consensus-based standards that are developed alongside the private sector. It also strengthens Americans' public-private partnership model, ensuring industry and government work together to advance U.S. innovation and goals. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
I recognize Ms. Lofgren.
Thank you very much. In the NIST title of the CHIPS and Science Act, Congress directed NIST to lead coordination among federal agencies to partner and support U.S.-based companies in their efforts to shape the development of international standards. I support the amendment as it brings attention to that partnership as it pertains to NASA and its industry partners, and yield back.
Gentlewoman yields. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question on it is on the adoption of Webster Amendment Number 30. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered also by Representative Webster of Florida. The clerk shall report Webster Amendment 32.
amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Webster of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize Representative Webster for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment directs NASA to provide a briefing to Congress no later than 180 days after enactment on its efforts to streamline operations and increase efficiency by improving its digital infrastructure, as well as additional resources needed to support sustained adoption of such infrastructure. It will encourage NASA to continue advancing a full digital transformation while preserving data ownership and intellectual property. I urge my colleagues to support it. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Webster Amendment 32. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. The clerk shall report Whitesides Amendment 32.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Ranking Member Lofgren for your leadership on this important legislation amendment. When I was in elementary school, I was always placed at the back end of the classroom due to my last name, and so I feel very comfortable bringing up the caboose of this important and efficiently run hearing on the future of NASA. I also ask grace for my colleagues for having to listen to me for this last stretch, but I believe the amendments will make NASA and our country even stronger. For decades, NASA's civil servants and contractors have delivered world-class science, engineering, and innovation to advance space exploration, probe the boundaries of aeronautics and science, and serve the broader national interest. From solving complex technical challenges to supporting critical efforts beyond NASA's core mission, the agency's workforce has consistently demonstrated exceptional expertise, dedication, and commitment to public service. This amendment expresses a sense of Congress that the unique capabilities of NASA's workforce are an asset to our nation and are one of the agency's greatest strengths. It would authorize an assessment and analysis of workforce trends and skill sets that enable NASA to carry out its current and future missions. Specifically, the amendment directs the NASA administrator to evaluate skills that are highly specialized, difficult to replace, and essential to mission success or crucial safety areas. By understanding where expertise is required and how that impacts missions, research, and U.S. leadership in space, Congress and NASA can keep our center strong and develop an informed plan to make forward-looking decisions. In short, this amendment ensures that NASA has the right people with the right skills at the right time so the agency can continue to lead, inspire, and safely execute its mission on behalf of the American people. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Whiteside's Amendment Number 32. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is also offered by Representative Whitesides of California. The clerk shall report Whiteside's Amendment 34.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California. At the end of Title 8, add the
Without
following.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by thanking Representative Overnolte for co-sponsoring this amendment with me. This amendment uses proven NASA technologies to strengthen future exploration missions while reducing cost, risk, and development time. NASA has a long track record of success in entry, descent, and landing, known as EDL technologies. These capabilities have enabled the safe delivery of complex spacecraft and payloads to challenging destinations and represent decades of investment and expertise. No other country in the world has this level of expertise. It's what enables us to have the most successful record in landing on Mars and other bodies. We cannot squander it, and we cannot cede our leadership to China. This amendment would identify previously successful EDL technologies and leverage them for ongoing and future missions, encouraging NASA to build on what works for maximum success. This amendment directs the NASA administrator to assess how these technologies can be applied to missions currently in development, which will give Congress insight into where EDL capabilities can be adapted to support upcoming exploration goals. My amendment would ensure that NASA's successes in landing are used to their full advantage, which will maximize scientific development and improve mission safety. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on adoption of Whiteside's Amendment 34. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. The clerk shall report Whiteside's Amendment 35.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California. Add at the end of Title 8 the following.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The core of this amendment is simple. It requires the agency to produce and transmit an operations plan promptly based on enacted law. As a former chief of staff of the agency, I know how important such operation plans are to agency planning, as well as to bipartisan congressional oversight, something that I know is shared by both the chairman and the ranking member of this committee. This amendment is about transparency, continuity, and consistency with congressional funding intent. The amendment also strengthens congressional oversight and communication standards. It requires NASA to provide timely notice to the authorizing committees whenever the agency submits operating plans, proposes major reorganizations, or undertakes reprogramming that require notification. This ensures that the authorizing committees receive the same information at the same time as appropriators, rather than after decisions have already been made. To put it simply, this amendment does not limit NASA's flexibility to manage its programs or respond to operational needs. It ensures that Congress gets the op plans it requires to conduct its oversight and requires that major funding changes, organizational shifts, and spending plans are transparent, coordinated, and aligned with congressional intent. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion? There's no further discussion. The question is on the adoption of Whiteside's Amendment 035. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. The clerk shall report Whiteside's Amendment Number 31.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California. In subsection B of Section 6.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wildfires are becoming more frequent, intense, and destructive, as we saw 1 year ago when devastating wildfires hit Southern California, destroying lives and livelihoods. It's crucial that the government meets this challenge head-on across agencies using all the capabilities of the federal government. This simple amendment strengthens NASA's role in addressing the threat of wildfires by ensuring the agency leverages the best available scientific and technical guidance. It directs the administrator to incorporate relevant recommendations from the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, their recent report on modernizing wildland fire response when carrying out NASA's wildfire-related activities. This report was hailed as a gold standard approach to this crisis, and it was conducted by nonpartisan technical experts. By better aligning NASA's Earth observation, research, and technology capabilities with the real-world needs of wildfire detection, monitoring, and response, we can improve data integration, modeling, and decision support for firefighters and emergency managers on the ground. Congress has a responsibility to ensure federal agencies are working in coordination with each other when it comes to research and prevention of natural disasters. This amendment ensures relevant science is being put to good use, leading to more effective tools for those on the front lines of wildfire response. In short, it helps integrate NASA's capabilities into a coordinated, science-driven national wildfire strategy, which will in turn save lives. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Whiteside's Amendment 31. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. If the clerk would report Whiteside's Amendment 35.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Representative Obernolte for co-sponsoring this amendment with me. The Deep Space Network is a world-class asset that underpins nearly every deep space mission the United States conducts. It is the network of radio dishes, communication systems, and experts which together talk to the probes and spacecraft millions of miles away. It gives us remarkable photos from Pluto, videos from Mars, and amazing science from Saturn's rings. For more than 60 years, the Deep Space Network has supported human spaceflight planning and protected the public through planetary defense. Yet over time, this system has come under strain. The number and complexity of missions relying on the network continues to increase, while years of insufficient funding for maintenance have caused real operational risk. This amendment is a direct response to that challenge. First, it directs NASA to conduct an assessment of the Deep Space Network's current condition. It would require the agency to identify areas of concern, evaluate engineering needs, and report on the upgrades necessary to sustain the network. This ensures we have up-to-date information so that Congress can make informed decisions regarding ongoing and future missions. Second, the amendment requires an impact assessment of the inoperability of the crucial 230-foot wide antenna at the Goldstone Deep Space Complex. This antenna plays a crucial role in deep space communications, and its loss has negative consequences for scientific research, mission safety, and planetary defense capabilities. Not only can we use this assessment to identify the extent of the damage and the number of missions affected, it will also outline ways to strengthen the resilience of the Goldstone complex to prevent similar failures in the future. This amendment will allow us to make use of NASA's tools that have proven invaluable over the years. It creates more accountability and a plan for the future for infrastructure that is essential to keep America's leadership in space strong. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. No further discussion on the amendment. The question is on adoption of Whiteside's Amendment number 35. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. Clerk shall report Whiteside's Amendment 36.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California. Add at the
Without
end.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by thanking Representative Begich for co-sponsoring this amendment with me. The International Space Station is one of the most complex engineering achievements in human history. It represents more than 3 decades of international collaboration and investment by U.S. taxpayers, estimated at well over $100 billion. Current plans call for the station to be orbited at the end of its service life in 2030. This amendment does not seek to change that policy. Instead, it asks a straightforward question. Before we permanently dispose of an asset of this magnitude, should we fully understand whether it's viable to preserve it in orbit for potential use by future generations? This amendment directs NASA to conduct a study on whether it would be feasible to safely move the station following its retirement in just a few short years to a higher, stable orbital storage location. It also directs the agency to examine the costs and risks of storing the station in orbit, including risks to other space assets, and the potential for uncontrolled reentry into Earth's atmosphere. Importantly, this amendment does not mandate such a relocation, nor does it authorize construction, funding, or execution of any such plan. Simply ensures that Congress receives a rigorous fact-based analysis so that future decisions involving the ISS are informed by scientific reality. At a time when we're thinking seriously about sustainability in space, this amendment protects taxpayer investments and ensures that we fully understand our options before an irreplaceable asset is permanently retired. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Just personally, I want to say how much I appreciate this amendment and wholeheartedly support it myself. Now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Byer.
Mr. Chairman, I just also want to weigh in. We talked earlier an hour ago about preserving historic space assets and how important it is. I just hate the thought that we would take something, not just so we spend all that money on, but such an important part of human history and dump it in the Pacific Ocean, never to be seen again, rather than preserving it. Well, we don't know whether we can do it in orbit, but if we can, we should really explore that hard. And I really thank Mr. Whitesides for his leadership on this issue.
Great treehouse. Gentleman yields back. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Questions on the adoption of Whitesides Amendment number 36. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by guess who? Representative Whitesides of California. Clerk shall report Whitesides Amendment number 34.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As autonomous aircraft become increasingly prevalent for civil applications, their ability to operate safely in real-world conditions is crucial. Many areas where these systems could provide the greatest benefit, like wildfire response, disaster recovery from floods and tornadoes, and search and rescue missions, are also the most challenging. Smoke, fire, dust, complex terrain, and disrupted communications can all affect sensing, navigation, and control. One day, this technology will allow firefighters and other first responders to respond to emergencies more safely and effectively. This amendment authorizes NASA to research, test, and demonstrate autonomous and semi-autonomous aerial systems under conditions that impair sensing, navigation, and communications. It enables flight demonstrations of commercial vehicles to test autonomy, navigation, and human-machine interaction in dynamic atmospheric and terrain conditions, and it supports efforts to reduce latency in onboard sensing, data processing, and decision-making during time-sensitive operations. Finally, it requires a report to Congress on NASA's activities and key findings within 1 year. These capabilities are key to advancing American leadership in autonomous aviation and ensuring that cutting-edge research translates into real-world public benefit, like fighting wildfires and recovering from extreme storms and flooding. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on the adoption of Whitesides Amendment number 34. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Whitesides of California. The clerk shall report Whitesides Amendment 37.
Amendment to H.R. 7273, offered by Mr. Whitesides of
Without
California.
objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Whitesides of California for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, the end is in sight. My last one here. NASA's Planetary Science Division is essential to advancing our understanding of the solar system, strengthening our science workforce, and maintaining American leadership in deep space. At a time when China seeks global advantage by pursuing an ambitious portfolio of planetary science missions, we must ensure that our country and the world recognizes we will not give up our acknowledged primacy in this field. This amendment makes clear that NASA should sustain a balanced portfolio of discovery, new frontiers, and flagship missions launched at the cadence recommended by the most recent Planetary Science Decadal Survey. This balance would allow NASA to pursue high-impact flagship missions while supporting competitively selective missions that drive innovation, develop talent, and broaden participation across the scientific community. This amendment also reinforces congressional direction that planetary science priorities should be guided by the scientific community through the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine decadal surveys, which represent the consensus of the scientific community. The decadal survey process ensures transparency, rigor, and balance across mission classes and scientific disciplines. The amendment also emphasizes the importance of research and analysis programs which underpin mission success and train the next generation of scientists. Finally, it underscores the value of continuing productive missions already operating across the solar system. Extending scientifically valuable missions is one of the most cost-effective ways to deliver discoveries, and this amendment ensures these decisions remain guided by scientific merit and established review processes. By supporting NASA's planetary science program, we can ensure that the United States continues to lead the world in exploring and understanding our solar system. Thank you, sir, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any further discussion? Hearing none. The question is on the adoption of Whiteside's Amendment Number 37. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. No additional amendments are listed on the amendment roster. Are there any additional amendments? Hearing none, the committee now will recess for 5 minutes and then will reconvene for recorded votes. The committee stands in recess subject to the call of the chair. Okay, good afternoon. The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will now come back to order. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendments to H.R. 7273. Do you still want to have a recorded vote? Yes, sir. Okay. The unfinished business is a recorded request for H.R. 7273 amendment. Members will record their votes using the electronic voting system. The question is on the amendment offered by Representative Stevens of Michigan, designated Stevens number 7. The clerk will open the vote. Cast your votes, please. Anybody else coming? Okay. Yeah. Have all members present voted? I think we have. Does any member wish to change their vote? The clerk will now close the vote and report. Please report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 18 and the nays are 19.
The amendment is not adopted. No additional amendments are pending. Are there any additional amendments to H.R. 7273? Hearing none, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the committee report H.R. 7273, the NASA Reauthorization Act of 2026, as amended, to the House with a recommendation that the bill be favorably approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 7273 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. A recorded vote has been requested. Members will record the votes using the electronic voting system. And the question is on favorably reporting H.R. 7273 as amended to the House. The clerk will now open the vote. Okay.
Yay.
The clerk will have all members voted. Does any member wish to change their vote? The clerk will now close the vote and report. Please report.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 37 and the nays are 0.
The ayes have it, and the bill as amended is ordered favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, I ask that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. So ordered. Members will have 2 calendar days to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on these measures. With no further business before the committee now stands adjourned. Okay.